It's funny you ask this because it is like I talked about getting more balance, but I
Hmm.
love the hustle of it. I love the just dive in and get done what needs to get done. Um, I just love like there's it's a different kind of culture. Like you all kind of work together. You all have the same goal of just making whatever you're doing successful.
Mm.
Um, and it's a roller coaster ride, and I kind of like the adrenaline of it. I'm not gonna lie.
Welcome to the Powered by People podcast. I'm Wendy Pauls, and this is the show where we explore the stories and passions behind the professionals making a difference. Join me for real conversations as we celebrate the heart behind the hustle, one story at a time. Today, I'm joined by someone who knows how to build strong foundations, both in business and in fitness. Kristin is an HR pro with over 15 years of experience helping startups and scaling teams, creating solid HR structures so founders can focus on growing their companies. She made the bold move of leaving a secure tech job to follow her passion, and she hasn't looked back. Outside of work, she's a dedicated wife and mom of two, a world traveler, a coffee lover, and a fierce competitor, having taken on both the CrossFit Open and High Rocks. Kristin, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me.
I
Wow.
am delighted to have you. I'm delighted. I mean, I know you obviously to a degree, but there's just so much more that I do want to know about you, and I don't know a lot about you in your like work environment for sure.
hmm hmm
So I'm really excited.
Well, I think you nailed the intro. So thank you. I think we're done. No,
Yeah, there we go. That's all we need to know.
that's it. We're done. Great job, Wendy.
Perfect. Perfect. I actually want to start with something fun. And I love that you have it right on your work website. And that is about your name having an invisible E. It's,
hmm
I mean, I remember when I first saw you, I thought, is it Kristen? Is it Kristen? Like, what is it? Right. And I know that's really common, which is why you
It
address it.
is.
So tell the story about your silent E.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. I was born in Germany. So you don't have the E at the end of your name and it's pronounced Christine. When I was 12 years old, my parents moved to Canada. And then ever since then, the confusion of is it Kristen, is it Christine came in. I went to school and usually I just let it go. Like I almost like didn't even notice it anymore. My maiden name was Michelle. And even when I met Chad, they all called me and his friends, and his mom, they all called me Kristen Michael.
No
So
way.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So
You have a stage
yeah,
name, basically.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, and then Chad, like there was always a bigger confusion after I would leave the room. People would be like, "You called her Christine. It's Kristen," and I'd be like, "No, it is Christine." They're like, "No, but it's spelled Kristen." And so Chad, my husband, uh, reminded me to make sure I correct people. He's like, "It's way easier if you correct them up front than 2 years, 3 years later when the confusion comes in." So,
Sure,
so yeah,
sure.
yeah, and
Oh,
actually,
well,
we travel a lot, and I would say
mhm.
anywhere in the world other than North America, people pronounce my name properly. So it's very interesting.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Well, we're going to go a little bit all over today. And yeah, feel free if you want to add or take us somewhere. But I have sort of some work questions, but I have some, personal questions, not
Sure.
intimately personal, don't fret,
Yeah.
but just getting to, the other aspects of you besides just your work self. But I also find it fascinating. This I already mentioned in your intro that you walked away from a secure tech job to build your own path. What was
hmm
the moment? Do you remember the moment that you said to yourself, I have to do this?
It was during COVID. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, I'm very career driven. I always was, and I would say I still very much am. I think my priorities have changed. So during COVID, working from home, the kids being home, seeing them, how they learned and how
Mm,
they were just two different little personalities. And so Lucas would have been 6, and Sophie would have been 8, 9.
hmm.
I got to know them so much better. Before, we would always just drop them off at school during the extended day program. So it was like drop them off at 7:45 or 8
Yeah.
o'clock, and then hustle to work to make sure you're there, on time. And then we would pick them up at like 5:30, quarter to 6. And then it's like, then you rush to make dinner. They didn't really have homework at the time because they were JK, SK, grade one
Mm,
kind of thing. Um, and then I just kind of realized like there was so much I didn't really know about them. It's weird to say, but their little personalities that the teachers see during the day, you don't necessarily get to see like that, right? And I remember saying to Chad, I'm like, I don't know if I can go back to work. Like, the idea
mm,
of having to then put them back into extended day and then have this, 8 till 5, 9 till 5. And in the tech startup world, you don't work 9 till 5. It's work comes home with you, you work on weekends. Like, I remember I'd be traveling for work. So just trying to balance all of that was like, do I really want that? And so we were going through some restructuring at the time. I was a director of HR. And so I was like, this is kind of my way out. I don't know if I want to do this. And so we just kind of chatted and I said, listen, like, I'll help you out until you find someone. Um, but this isn't going to be long term. And so I ended up swapping and just consulting for them for whenever they needed something. So I took the rest of the year, which was about 6 months, to just really figure out what I wanted to do. And there'd be some opportunities that come up that, they were wondering if I'd be open for an interview. I had the interview. I would tell Chad about it. And he's like, don't jump in, like, don't do it. Cause he's like, I can
mm.
already tell you're itching to get back into it. But he's like, he slowed me down and I'm super grateful for that. So one of the books that I read was Think Like a Monk by Shetty. Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was a life changer. It
Mm,
really he, talked about your values as an individual and how those translate over into the family and how they show in your everyday. And I was like, hmm. So did that. I did a workshop with Dave Inglis for strategic solitude. So it was all about, setting goals, putting like looking at the different buckets. I've changed it a little bit based on what he had shown us during that workshop, just to like to fit it for me personally.
mm-hmm.
So it was really like digging deep and then going from there. And so I would say the consulting aspect of it, going off on my own, wasn't until that half a year was up where I was like, I think there is a need for what I can offer. And so yeah.
Yeah. So have you looked back since?
Oh my
Or
gosh,
have
no,
you
I'm
felt no? Okay.
not once, to be honest with you. I feel bad saying that. Um, Sometimes I'll get off a call with a client and I literally will walk downstairs or I'll call Chad on FaceTime because he works from home and just tell him how much I love my job. And
Mm,
it's like I'm excited to work. I've got the balance
yeah.
that I wanted. I'm there for the kids when they get home. And yeah, it's
Hmm.
no, I have not looked back.
And it sounds like you had support. Like that is something I'm sure you don't take it for granted, but I bet there's people who might not be in a situation where their significant other might support them
Mhm.
to do such a bold move, right? So that was very fortunate for you. Yeah.
Yes, yes, super grateful for that. He was holding down the fort for sure. We've
Uh,
had it where it was reversed, where he was dabbling into going with a startup or taking a bit of a risk in his career, and I had, the job security. So it was like, okay, well, I'll hold down the fort. You go and figure this out. And then it was kind of reversed.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Definitely, we very much support each other, which you need. And I will say that I would say, several people that helped me just along the way. So whether it was just like going for a coffee chat with them and just like getting that confidence that I can go off and do this on my own, or just being genuinely interested in what I was planning on doing, or
yeah.
just checking in throughout. There was someone that really stands out that he was a consultant already. And so he's
Mm-hmm,
like, listen, if you want to pick my brain, let's meet for coffee. And so I took him up on that, and that really also helped a lot. So it's like
Wow.
being surrounded by people like that really
Mm,
makes a huge difference. And then
mhm.
my family was super supportive too. So,
That's
yeah.
wow. That's fantastic. Um, what is it about startups that energizes you or attracts you or interests you?
It, it's funny you ask this because it is like I talked about getting more balance, but I
Uh-huh.
love the hustle of it. I love the just dive in and get done what needs to get done. Um, I just love like there's it's a different kind of culture. Like you all kind of work together. You all have the same goal of just making whatever you're doing successful.
Mm.
Um, and it's a roller coaster ride, and I kind of like the adrenaline of it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So we
So yeah,
shouldn't be surprised that you like CrossFit workouts. Like there's a bit of an overlap here. Like,
maybe. Yeah, maybe.
yeah,
Maybe.
that
Yeah,
whole like rush and
it's never
jump in
boring.
and no,
Yeah,
never boring.
it's
Mm,
never boring, and you can actually see what you've accomplished. Do you know what I mean? Like there's just so
mm,
many things that need to happen that it's just so rewarding when you get, and you go through the motions of like, we need to get funding, and it's like, okay, well, our run rate, like we're running real low, and you got to get creative. And then
hmm.
you've built and this is when I was the director of HR with a previous company. You get to that point and you have to get real creative, you know? But then it's like you look around and you have these amazing people working there that are also they have the same goal, and they're willing to do what it takes to make the company successful. So it's not for everyone, to be honest with you. It takes a different kind of personality to be able to handle that.
I bet. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it would take a different type of person even to leave a secure job. Like that in itself. There's a lot of people
Yeah,
that want to and just they can't do it. Like it's pretty
yeah,
scary.
true,
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Um, it sounds like there may not be a typical day, but give me a semi-typical day. Like what would your work day like? What kinds of tasks or things are you working on?
I bounce around a lot between my different clients. So I've got a good number of fractional clients that I
Hmm.
support set number of hours every month. What like I literally take the HR aspect away from them, and I'll manage that fully, right? So from like the onboarding to performance management to reviewing policies or even creating policies because some of them have nothing, coming up with a recruitment strategy, doing compensation reviews, terminations do happen,
Oh,
and then yeah, so literally everything. So it's bouncing around a lot. I do have some clients where I go on site and I support them. Um, so it's you got to be able to multitask. And I always said I'm not a multitasker, um, but I'm really good with systems and tools. And I figured out a way to set myself up so I can support them. And you
mm,
have to be agile for sure,
hmm.
right?
Sounds like
I
it.
will say, I will say I have three part-time contractors now
Okay.
that also support my clients.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So that's another
Yeah.
part of your role. It's not just you, you have some other people on your team.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So I brought two on board last year,
Hmm.
and one just last week. Um, so they now we can also support because a lot of the time it's hiring support, but hiring takes a long time in terms of like phone interviews, reference
Mm.
checks,
Hmm.
right? Verbal offers. So it takes up a lot of the time. And I was finding I had less time to support my clients and do project work,
Yeah.
because I was busy doing phone interviews. So I've got the teams just picks up whatever needs to be done. So yeah, now we're able to really support our clients, because it's all hands on deck for them.
Oh, that's great. Can somebody
Yeah,
hire you just to fire people?
I do that as well. So that's just like a one off, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
do.
Yeah. Oh
They
man.
do.
They'd be like, I can't do it, I can't do it. Let's hire somebody to do it. You're
Yeah,
like a hit
they
woman.
do. That's right. They do.
Uh,
It's like they've never really seen me or talked to me, and all of a sudden they come into this meeting room, and
yeah.
there is me with some paperwork. And yeah, so I do that as well. So I've got fractional clients, but then also just like project based work.
Okay.
Last year, one of my big contracts was Stonehenge in Guelph. They had just gotten its therapeutic community.
Okay.
Um, so they got funding from the ministry to build this 30-unit supportive housing, 24-hour supportive housing
Mm. Mm-hmm.
for people with mental illness and addictions. And so there was a need from the time that they got the funding until the time that they were opening. It was like 2 months, and they had to hire for like 30 positions. So that was
Wow.
like,
Okay.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Those made for some very long days.
I bet. I
Yeah,
bet. Wow.
yeah. So that's project work. So that comes and
Yeah.
goes, but then you still have your fractional clients.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, that's
Yeah.
it. I'm getting clearer picture. Um, in your experience, what's one common HR challenge that small businesses consistently underestimate?
A challenge. I would say a big one is hiring. They can be very quick to hire
Mm-hmm.
because they have a need
Yep.
and they're like, we're really busy, we need to hire. And I would say just jumping on the first person that feels right,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
rather than going through
Mm-hmm.
the process, maybe taking a little bit longer. Um, I find that as a challenge.
Mm.
I would say another challenge, and this is why I started doing what I'm doing, is they I would say a lot of times they do rely on the expertise of a more senior HR professional, but they don't necessarily have the the money to hire someone full time, right? And again, it comes in ebbs and flows. So sometimes they go through a period and they're like, we really need someone, but then things kind of level out. Your programs are in place, your policies have been established, and then it's kind of like, hmm, now you're doing Costco runs. The director of HR will do a Costco run, and they're like, well, that's not money well spent.
Right.
And so I think that's a big struggle too for them, which is why I started doing what I do, is to just, for 15 hours a month, they can have that level of experience that they need, but they don't
Yes.
need to worry about keeping them busy or
Right.
giving them, those high value items.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like
Yeah.
totally a win-win.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting talking about hiring. I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Seth Godin, the author,
Hmm. Yeah.
and he talked about something that he does now for hiring for him, like himself. He will hire somebody for a project
Hmm.
before bringing somebody on kind of permanent,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's his way of, he says that's the
Testing.
interview. The
Yeah.
interview is how do they do on this? And
Yeah.
then, so, I mean, he
Yeah.
was saying, I think that's exclusively what he does now. Like he won't just do an
Yeah.
interview and hire somebody on. He wants to see how they work. And I thought,
For
oh my
sure.
gosh, it's genius, if
For
you
sure.
have a project that you can give
If
them.
you've got a
So
project, if you're able to, if you're not necessarily working within super confidential information, and you feel comfortable
yes.
giving them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. That's definitely a creative way. I remember years ago, there was a local tech startup. I forgot what they were called. It was kind of like a WhatsApp messaging company. They did the same thing. You would go there, and it was kind of like a trial.
Yeah.
You would get paid, you were on payroll. So they were definitely creative in how they were doing it. It was a big
Mm-hmm.
buzz going on around that
Mm.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For
I think
sure. But
great
I would say,
idea.
like, just even spending time, like, bringing them in, letting the team meet with them. Don't just letting the hiring manager make the decision and,
Mm.
conducting the interview and they make the decision. Like, I find that's when I usually talk to them about 6 months later and it's like, it's not working out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to go on a couple of dates, is
Yeah,
what I call
I
it.
was thinking that. When you were saying that, I'm thinking, yeah, you don't just kind of meet somebody one time and then, get into a serious relationship, right? You got to get
Right.
to know somebody. We can all
That's right.
uh, put our best foot forward once for
Exactly.
however long.
Yeah,
How,
exactly.
can we keep that up over time, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
in different settings. Um, Many startups don't think about HR until there's a problem. What's one thing every small business should have in place from day one?
I mean, there's definitely policies that in order to be compliant,
Hmm.
so, or like training, you've got like your health and safety training, AODA training, which is your accessibility for Ontarians with disabilities. So you need to have that training. And the thing is like you don't need to go and reinvent the wheel. It's the ministry has these trainings online for
Hmm.
free. Your employees can go and get a certificate. You have it on file, and boom, you're compliant. So it's like,
Yeah.
but a lot of times employers just don't know that you need to like the amount of times I go in and I start supporting them on a fractional basis, and I start looking at the policies and the training they have that aren't in place
Mm.
is pretty interesting. But it's also very hard to figure out that information, to be honest with you. It's
Hmm.
not like it's just not easy to obtain, to be honest with you. So
Hmm.
so that's definitely one. And then the other one is like everyone tends to be able to interview, but they don't necessarily know the questions you should refrain from, right? So then you're kind of crossing over into a different territory.
How often do those types of questions change? Because I know, say, over probably the last decade, there's probably a lot of questions that you can't ask that you could perhaps a decade ago. What do what do you think kind of is it? Do you need to be up on that
Yeah, you
annually? Is it
do.
every, yeah?
Yeah, you do. Like, for example, last year there was this thing where it's like, okay, like there's a bill that's gonna be getting passed. And that's, you can't just post a job and leave it open, right? So some companies will just post a job and they'll leave it open for the whole year or whenever until they find someone good. You're supposed to now do once the bill passes, but you have to disclose
Hmm.
that the posting, you're not necessarily actively hiring, it's just kind of open to see, right? So you have to disclose that information. So it does
Mm,
evolve in terms of the
yeah.
questions you can ask. I would more say it's like the way you ask the question evolves
Okay.
and how you ask it. So people are like, you can't
Mm.
ask that question. So it's like, okay, well, I can't directly ask you how many children you have.
Huh?
But
Hmm.
for example, like just through normal conversation, I say my name, is Christine.
Hmm.
It's spelled different. They say, oh, uh, or I say I was born in Germany. And they're like, oh, where
Hmm.
were you born? Right.
Hmm.
So I was like, Dresden in Germany, which is
Hmm.
Eastern Germany.
Yeah.
So it's like just those little casual conversations can
Yeah.
already be like off the limit. Mhm, mhm. So it's like just providing that, right? It's sometimes it's just very, like it's just through casual conversation and there's no
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
thought behind why they're asking. It's just being friendly and,
Sure.
you know,
Yeah. Well,
making
let me
conversation.
know if I ask any questions today that I could get in trouble for.
You're not interviewing me for a job. We're good.
Are you sure? Maybe I'm secretly interviewing. All right. You've worked with a lot of growing teams. What's a sign that a company is scaling in a healthy way versus one that's maybe heading for trouble? Is there something you can see?
Great question. I would say if they're fundraising,
Hmm.
they're actively outgoing fundraising, they're meeting with investors. I think that's definitely a healthy way. I think where you're starting to wonder is if they're not closing their investment rounds. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
If they continuously drag on, that's one. Um, it's interesting because someone once told me that when people get stressed, you see their true personality come out.
Yep.
And you can sense, and it's so true, you can sense this in certain founders. So when they get into this, you know, to the point where they're stressed, maybe because they're having issues closing the financing round, whatever it is, um, you can tell. And
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden their demeanor changes, the way they are with their team changes, like they become a lot more
Mm.
close off. And I don't know if it's just me because I've worked with them enough, with, founders or senior
Yeah.
senior leaders that I pick up on those cues. But I would say even when I was early in the stages of my career, I could pick up on that. So that's definitely one. Some startups, they go really big on all the perks, right? Like they want to stand out with all the
Mm-hmm.
perks, catered lunches, whatever else. You've got your ping pong. They have this idea of having certain conferences that they want to go to and take the team to. When you start seeing those all of a sudden reducing back, is another
Oh,
sign,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I
yeah.
always say, like, start small and build. Like,
Sure.
don't
Yeah.
go in super extravagant, like build on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then you're
Mm-hmm.
also showing your team that, hey, the company is doing well and your contributions are really making a difference because now we're able to offer this, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I could see, companies seeing what other companies are doing and thinking that's a cool idea, trying
yeah,
to keep up, but maybe they're not
yeah,
at that level yet.
right, right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. And then I always tell them to, if you're trialing something, just communicate that. Like, just say, hey, we're going to try something. Don't know if we're going to keep this program. We want to
Mm-hmm.
test it out. And I think it's okay to be transparent like that. You're a startup, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's all trial and error, right? But when you don't communicate that properly and you
Mm-hmm.
offer a certain perk that then you don't offer, employees become scared and nervous,
Of course. Yeah.
right?
No, absolutely. You would wonder what's going on for sure.
Yeah, right.
What advice would you give to a founder who thinks they don't need HR yet?
It's funny because I've had these conversations. They're like, we don't need it yet. And then two
Uh-huh.
years later, hey, we need you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't necessarily know if I give them advice. I would just let them know, hey, if you need help with X, Y, and Z, if you need help with the policies, if you want someone to just draft a handbook, if right, like let me know. I can help out with those one-off things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but what I always find is that founders think they don't need it, and they'll do their own contracts and they try and manage it all. And to be honest, that's not their time well spent, right? Like, unless you're actually someone that loves the HR aspect, and I have yet to find someone that's a founder that loves dealing with that stuff. Um, right. So it's like your time's not being utilized properly, and your skill set's not being utilized properly. Most of the time, you're still going online, Googling or whatever, trying to figure out what you should be doing. So I don't know if so if someone says to me, we're not ready yet,
Yeah.
I say, okay. And I leave them with some resources to be like, just so you know, when you hit a certain threshold, 6 employees, 10 employees,
Mm-hmm.
15, 20 employees, here are the things that you want to start considering.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I
And
think it's
it's also
great.
like,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say it's great that you can offer the fractional or a la carte type things, right? So
Hmm.
they don't have to. It's not an all or nothing, right? You
Right,
can kind of
right,
customize your services to their needs. So
right,
that's
right.
fantastic. Hmm.
Like I have some clients, they're, 15 employees and they're 10 hours a month. I support them for 10 hours a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's others that are close to 30 and they're 20 hours a month. So
Hmm.
it's really, yeah, like you said, I can really customize it and tailor it for them. So yeah, not necessarily would give them feedback. I
Hmm.
just be it's one of those things where when they're really stuck in their ways and they don't think, like I
Hmm.
don't need to pry on that, right? Like they also
Sure.
need to come around to that conclusion themselves and eventually they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they think back to the conversation. So
And go, I remember that time when.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. For sure.
But when it really, I think I would say when they really realize is when they need to hire. And then they're
Mm,
like,
hmm.
we can't keep up with all of this, or it's just becoming too much work,
Hmm.
right? And one
Yeah.
thing I always say, like, I remember when I first decided to go off and do this on my own and support startups, that do you think that there's enough need for it? And I was like, absolutely, because
Yeah.
what happens is they try and do it themselves, or you've got an office manager that will take on some of the HR aspects. But when when their startup is now scaling, you need to have the programs in place to be able to support the scaling team. And so when you don't have that, you're constantly going to find yourself just trying to keep your head above water. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can't actually be strategic, right? So
Mm,
then what they do
right.
is they're like, "Oh, well, we have so much work. We're now going to hire another HR person." And you don't need another HR person. You really, what you should have just done is figured out what needs to be set up from the beginning. And anything you set up will scale with you,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And so then they're like, we need someone more senior because they need someone to be strategic. But what they could have done is if had they built the groundwork, the base, right? Like I was talking about like building a
Uh-huh.
house. Like
Yeah.
you can't have not have the base and continue to build your house, which is your scaling
Right.
company.
Yeah.
It's gonna collapse at some point, right? So then
Mm.
you're constantly just struggling to keep your head above water. Um, so yeah, I would that's usually the conversations that we have is you want to be ready. If you want to scale, you got to be ready and you got to have all these things in place so that you can scale.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we shift gears for a minute and go
Yeah.
into the personal side? Okay.
Hmm.
So you've competed both in, as I mentioned earlier, the CrossFit Open. How many
Yeah.
CrossFit Opens have you done?
Oh, I want to say three,
Okay.
three maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one High Rocks so far?
One high rock so
Yeah.
far.
Okay.
Looking
What do
for a
you,
partner, maybe to do a second.
oh, hint, hint. Uh, what do you love about pushing yourself in those kinds of challenges?
Oh God. You know what? If you would have asked me like a few years ago, I've been like,
Uh-huh.
I don't like pushing myself. I think it's just the feeling at the end. Like you feel like you've accomplished something and you look at the journey of when you started training for something and
Mm-hmm.
then, and how you had those tough days where you didn't want to show up for training and you really just wanted to give up and not go. And then you've accomplished that. It's just so rewarding. And it's funny that you said you kind of compared this to like me, like
Yeah.
in the adrenaline of this. It's the same thing because it's so funny that you compared that. But it's true because it's like you put your head down, you grind it out, you get to work, and then you kind of get to the end of it and you look back at what you were able to accomplish and you're like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
like that's significant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is
Yeah.
like the runner's high at the end.
Hmm.
Yeah, when you're done,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, not
Yeah.
during. That's what people get confused about sometimes, I think. I've had years ago I used to train people in running, like their first
Hmm.
5Ks, 10Ks, whatever. And sometimes people would be like, I don't feel that when I'm running. And I'm like, well, no, it's not when you're running.
Yeah,
Like a
no.
lot of time when I'm running
You
or
really
when
want
I'm
to
doing the
quit.
workouts, yeah, you're just fighting the
You
urge
want
to
to
quit.
quit.
It is that
Yeah,
whole like after, right? And the way that you
it is.
feel. Would you have
Because it
imagined
was
if we
right
went,
after too that I was gonna sign up for another high rock. So I was like, let's do this again.
yeah, I know the
Yeah.
rush. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
As soon as you forget the pain, it has to be long enough that you've
Yeah,
recovered
it's true.
enough and then yeah,
That's right.
you're ready to
That's
do it
right.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you have imagined if we went back 10 or 15 years, like would you have seen yourself doing these kinds of things? Were you always inclined that way?
No.
No,
No.
no. Yeah.
I remember it was between after I had Sophie, and before I had Lucas, I would go to the gym, the Good Life, women's only, during lunchtime. And then I used to love Big Bacon Classics from Wendy's. And then after the gym, I would go get a Big Bacon Classic and my French fries and go back to the office and eat and work. And then so I was never like I never really liked working out. I didn't like it, but I also never had like any good programs. So it's kind of like
Hmm.
I showed up and I'm like, oh, this machine looks fun. Like, what do I do?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I never stuck with it. But then after I had Lucas, uh, our youngest, I was like, okay, like we're done having kids. I think I want to, just kind of lose that body weight and then
Hmm.
or that baby fat, and then I'm done. And so I was thinking like one session of the baby's boot camp
Uh-huh.
at Limitless would get me through it from like January until I don't know, it was April, I think. And I was like, yep, and then I'll just be done. But then I just got hooked. I like the programming. I love the people. yeah, and now it's been 10 years now.
Yeah, yeah.
So no,
And it
I would
was
have never thought that.
right. And you didn't just stay like just going to classes doing the workouts, but got into some of the competitions and the really
Yeah,
intense
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. So
Amazing.
I think it was
Amazing.
2015 that I joined in, and I think in 2016 I did the open workout. I was like, and I was coming in, I was like, I do not want to touch a barbell. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep. I
it's
know. No,
crazy.
when I started, I was, yeah, totally green in that regard too. I'd only really done running in the past.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, then some boot camps. The boot camps were my first introduction into like things like push-ups and strength work that were more fun for me than just
Yeah,
going to a gym and finding weights and doing that kind of thing. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And it's the community, right?
yes, yeah,
Like being surrounded, and this is the thing too, like you work for a startup, you're surrounded by like-minded people that, like
mm,
I said, they have that same goal, right? They're
hmm,
very driven. It's the same thing at the gym. It's
yeah,
like our community at LP is very much about the community, and everyone pushes themselves. It's.
yeah. It's great.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah,
I know we'd
yeah.
like to tell everybody to try it, but we also don't want to because we we don't want our class to be too crowded.
We don't want to be on the wait list
That's right.
and
We don't
not
want to be
get
on the
in.
wait list, so they can join other classes.
So I promise 6 a.m.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. Yes. You're a big traveler also. What's been your most unforgettable, or let's say one of your most unforgettable trips? And then where's your dream destination? So tell me about an unforgettable trip and what's still on your bucket list.
Okay. I think unforgettable trip was when we went to India. It
Oh.
was in 2010. It was my husband Chad, and then two of our friends, one of our high school friends and his cousin came.
Hmm.
And so the four of us went to India for a month. So we traveled
For a
around. Yeah,
month.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So we
Oh my
did
gosh.
India
Okay.
and Nepal.
Uh-huh.
It was amazing because you really got to learn the culture. And I would say that was my most memorable trip.
Mm.
It was the first real big trip that I did without my family or my parents. Um, and yeah, being gone for a month, it was like we experienced a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and then it was
Is that your
actually,
longest trip? Like, have you gone away for longer than a
yeah,
month?
yeah, I would
Yeah.
say no, no, it's been a
No.
month.
Okay.
It's been the
Okay.
longest. We've done three
Okay.
weeks.
Mm.
A couple of years ago. But then India was also um, the company I was working for, they opened an office in India. So it was like within a year after I got back from India. And so I was working with a lot of the team from the Bangalore office in India.
Hmm.
And then I started traveling to India. So
No
I think
way.
during my time at that company, I think I went like 4 times to Bangalore, and I absolutely loved it. And
Mm.
then that's when like I already had kids now. Like I had Sophie, and then I remember I had Lucas was little when I had to go to India. Um, and I was like, I love the people, I love the culture, I love the craziness. And I find when you travel, you really learn so much more about their culture. And then you come here and you see some of that cultural
Mm.
aspect here,
Hmm. Yep.
and but you understand why they're like that. You
Mm.
understand where it's coming from because you've been in those countries,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
Like India, super overcrowded. I remember going to the post office because I was sending someone that helped us plan our trip a thank you gift. And it was the day that it was like the application day to go to the military. And it was packed in there. And it's like, and if you didn't pay attention, people would just swoop in front of you in the line.
Hmm.
But it's like
Hmm.
being there, you really understand why. There's just so many people that
Yeah.
you got to get in or you're never getting anywhere.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
like, so we started doing that, and it's almost like the culture, it's the norm. It's like you
Sure.
got to push to get
Yep.
to the front of the line,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that was really cool. So that was one of my most memorable trips. Um, the other one is when we took the kids to Kenya and Tanzania. That was also cool because
Mm.
again, it was just a completely different lifestyle, and now being able to show that to the
Yeah.
children
Yeah.
is really cool. Like I
Yeah.
remember Lucas saying he wanted to come back to Tanzania when he was older because he wants to help them build shelters and homes. So
Hmm.
yeah, so it's really cool.
Hmm.
I would love to take them to India.
Yeah. So you
I'm
did a
sure we will one day.
safari with the kids?
Yeah, so we did Masai Mara, Serengeti, and then we did 2 or 3 other national parks, 3 other so we did 5 national parks in total. We were
Wow.
there for 3 weeks, and then, we finished in Zanzibar in Tanzania, just like beach vacation, just like chill before we came back.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about it like this, does a little bit of the feeling come back?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you can
Oh, yeah.
remember and you can kind of feel,
Oh, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And that's one of the things, like, I don't know, we don't like, we don't really go to restaurants or bars or like we don't really do much. For us, it's like we want to show our big thing is like we want to show the kids the world,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And show them what's out there. And still, like, even though, they would have been a couple of years, 3 years younger, I guess it was 3 years now. Um, we still talk about certain things that happened on that trip or certain people that we remember from that trip. Like we still talk about it. So it's like those memories are always going to be with us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been
Yeah.
looking through old photos. Like I found one of my external hard drives recently. And so
Yeah.
I was looking at older photos that aren't on my computer, not the 12,000 that are on my computer or my phone. And yeah, there was a bunch of travel ones. And I thought I was getting lost in, just looking through, and you go back there, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there and you think about it again. And oh, this is
What's
a
been
great
your
time of year to do it because, like today,
yeah.
cold and foggy and miserable, and right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, nicer
No,
to
for
be
sure.
somewhere else. Yeah.
What's been your favorite trip then? Like most
I'd be
memorable?
hard pressed to find a favorite. I miss, there were, I did a lot of travel in a condensed period of time in my life because I worked
Hmm.
for a humanitarian organization.
Right. Right. Right.
So, like multiple trips, which was great for that
Hmm.
experience of
Hmm.
visiting again. So, Guatemala, I went to 7 times over a few years.
Very cool.
And yeah, I love that because that's a different type of experience than going somewhere,
Yeah.
once and coming back. And I went to Ghana, Africa, three
That's
times, I think
cool.
3 years in a row. That was
Okay.
really
Okay.
cool. I did a
Yeah. It's
Kenya
just the
trip as
experiences are
well.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, some of my favorite things they're not the touristy things.
I know.
Um, they're the very
I hear you.
ordinary things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
That's so
another
cool.
amazing trip, hubby and I, we did a trip together a few years back to Portugal. And
Oh, cool. Yeah.
it's definitely for both of us one of our favorites because it was very unplanned. Like
Uh-huh.
we researched a lot, and we had booked where we were staying, but that's it. Then we just
Yeah.
went and kind of while we were there decided what we wanted to do. So that was just amazing because yeah, then you just
Yeah.
kind of
You're just going with the flow.
everything's an adventure. Yeah. Yeah.
See, those are nice too. Those are nice too.
Hmm.
Some trips you got to have some kind of a plan. Some trips it's
Yep.
like, let's just go with the flow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. So where do you still want to go?
Oh, I think Japan. We've kind of talked about Japan.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Hmm. That's
That
one.
sounds amazing.
Uh, the other one was just going to Europe and working from Europe for a couple of months.
Mm, mm.
We're both able to do that. We can both work from anywhere in the world right now. So,
I envy that
um,
a lot. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that more because, of course, my husband's
yeah,
a musician, right?
yeah,
He is gone a lot. And if I can figure out how to be more mobile, then I could
yeah,
join him. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. That's been our thing. And but then summer's book up so fast,
I
and
know.
the kids have
Yeah.
stuff going on, and it's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe we'll do it next year.
Yeah.
Be great. It'd be
Pull
great.
them out and homeschool them for a little bit.
Honestly, I want to.
You're up for the adventure. You can handle it. Yeah. If anybody can do it after talking to you today, oh my gosh, you can do it. Yeah. Yeah. Put that on your list. And then you could go for like a
Yeah,
couple of months and you don't have to go in the summer when it's crowded.
that's true. That's
Just a
true.
thought. Before I
Yeah.
move on, I want to go to some rapid fire, but have you watched Somebody Feed Phil?
No.
Okay. It is a food travel show. It's with
Ooh.
Phil, what is the writer for Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah. Okay.
Quirky, funny guy, genuine though. Like if you watch a couple episodes, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like quirky guy,
Okay.
but he's real. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he goes to all different places around the world and he tries the food, but it's everything from like a food cart, to like Michelin star restaurant, like the whole
Oh, cool.
range.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's for choosing places maybe that you want to go. It's an
Yeah.
awesome show because
Okay,
he'll
okay,
show you
okay.
places, because you see a lot of, yeah, the everyday places and the high end. And
Well, that'd be so cool. I think the kids would love
yeah,
it too.
honestly,
The
it's
kids would love it.
such a feel good show. We watched it a
Yeah.
lot during COVID because that's kind of how we traveled. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
traveled by watching. And he's just such a happy guy. So anyway, I recommend it. Check it out.
That's cool. That's cool. I'll have to look
Okay,
into
are
that.
you up for some rapid fire questions?
No, sure. Hit me.
Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Ooh, morning person.
Okay. Always?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always been, yeah.
If you could teleport anywhere right now, where would you go?
Oh, it's a rapid fire. Probably back to my office and work from the office since I'm podcasting from somewhere else because
Okay.
we've got contractors at the house. I just
Okay.
love being home. I love my office. I love being at home. So I
Oh,
would
that's
say I
great.
wish I was actually doing this podcast from my office. It's kind of my
Yeah.
safe space.
Yeah.
Maybe not a funny answer, but that's what
But that's
came
what
to
came
mind
to
when you
mind. Yeah,
asked
that's right. You
that.
could wiggle your nose and fly back there. What's a book, podcast, or movie you'd recommend to everyone?
The Jay Shetty podcast, the Think Like a Monk book. Um, Highly
Yeah.
recommend it.
Side note, doesn't he have the most beautiful eyes?
But yeah,
Oh, his
just
eyes are stunning. Anyway, that's a side
yeah,
note.
yeah really stand out.
Yeah, they do. If you weren't in your current profession, what's a job you'd love to try?
Flight attendant.
Okay. Yeah. And what's a motto or mantra you live by?
Um, Mantra I live by. Oh, there's a few of them but they don't come to mind right now. Oh,
I'm the
In
same.
my
Mm-hmm.
email, I always say
Mm,
hustle and heart will set you apart, and I think
mm,
we very much instill that into our children. It's
mm-hmm,
like if you want to get anywhere in life, you got to work hard and you got to hustle.
mm-hmm,
Um, and yeah, that to me, like that's how I grew up. That's how Chad grew up. That's how, we like those are the things that we
mm-hmm,
try to instill into our children. But then also, I see it in my job. It's like the people that are most successful in the roles that they're in, or the people that land the jobs, are the people that really stand out by
mm-hmm,
just be like being a little bit elevated from the rest.
mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Yeah.
What's the best place for people to connect with you or learn more about what you do?
LinkedIn, connecting with me on LinkedIn, uh, Kristin Mueller. That's what you'd want to put in. Um,
Christine silent E. You
that's
should
right.
type that in, Christine with the silent E.
Silent E. Yeah, and I mean Instagram. If people are interested in more of my personal journey and our travels, I do share a lot through there. But
Oh,
yeah, mostly I would say LinkedIn for professional
okay.
connections if you wanted to, or I'm very much like I'm very much an open book. So if someone wanted to consider the consulting um, side of things, I'd be happy to have a
Mm-hmm,
conversation with them. And
mm,
I will share one book. It's called The Consulting Success.
yeah.
There's also by Michael Zipursky. He also has a really good podcast. And I remember there was a few years ago, I was driving a lot. I was going back and forth to Toronto a few times a week. And I would be listening to a lot of his podcasts. And every single podcast I had, there was new ideas or something that sparked new ideas that I was like,
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd be like, you telling Siri to send you a message so you don't forget by the time you get
You're
home.
right. I know, totally. Yes.
So that's definitely one. So if there's anyone that wants to connect, even just about the journey, happy to do that.
Yeah. Or Travel tips.
or travel tips.
Yeah.
I honestly,
Yeah.
everyone always tells me you need to post your itineraries. And there's
Yeah.
this website and I started, but it just takes so much time. It's like,
Hmm. I
you got
know.
it.
I know.
You need more time.
Yeah. We all need more time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Speaking of that, thanks for carving out time to be here to have this conversation with
Of course.
me. I have loved getting to know you better.
Oh,
And in fact, actually, all it did was truthfully make me want more. I want to know more.
oh,
I want to talk more. I want to, yeah. I was
oh, thank you.
careful to keep things moving along because maybe not everybody wants to listen for 2 or 3 hours, but I
Right.
would like to. I'd like to hear
Oh,
the more about trips and more about, yeah, all of it. It'd be great.
happy to chat
So
more.
yeah, so thanks for carving the time, and yeah, maybe we'll have to bring you back when you're ready to share some of these other ideas you got
Oh,
going on.
yes.
Okay.
Yes. That'd be
All
great.
right.
Thank you so much for
All
having
right.
me.
Until next
Okay.
time.
Bye.
Bye.